Got a long title, but that's because I'm starting a new series this year. So this is Reasons to Trust, and I'm giving you reason number one. Just as a point of clarification, these are mostly my own reasons. So a lot of these will be personal and type of thing. I will say this, though. Going into this, my background as far as Christian ministry is concerned is creation and science, dinosaurs, evolution, that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So you guys are going to hear a little bit of my forte here, some of my favorite things to talk about. The reason why this is called Reasons to Trust is, and I hope you'll find out very soon of why, it's about reasons to trust in the Lord, reasons to trust Him. First one I'm going to give is life from life. And this is a very big thing in the creation evolution debate, is life coming from non-life. This is what the evolutionary theory states, is that you can have life come from non-life, though it's impossible to prove. You cannot prove, they can't even do experiments in the laboratory in controlled environments to prove that it's possible. They are able to make, just as kind of a point in arguing both sides, they are able to make amino acids. But unfortunately, there are some left-handed, some right-handed. Those of you who are, biology and chemistry majors, you'll understand what that means. But not the point. The point is that when they try to make these type of things in the laboratory, every test that they've done, they usually make up about 80-some or 90-some% tar and a little bit of amino acids, which means you make little building blocks of life inside of a poisonous substance, which kills life. Okay, so that's not a success. I just want to point that out, okay? Hundreds of years ago, even into the thousands, they used to teach that life can come from non-life. They used to have recipes back in ye olden times where they said you could actually create mice. All you have to do is get some rotten food, some dirty rags, and put it in a corner for a couple weeks, and it will sprout mice. Or if you take no kidding, they didn't realize that. They also said, and this is awesome, just the minds of humanity, especially when you're disconnected from the Lord in creation. If you put rotting meat out on the table, it sprouts flies. Well, guess what? That was a very easy thing to test to see if that's actually true. Somebody ended up taking a hunk of meat, putting it in a glass jar, and put some cheesecloth over it and sealed it down tight, and guess what? No maggots, no flies, right? Very simple stuff to find out that life comes from life, and life can only come from life, which is what we're going to talk about in deeply, very deeply. My first verse I'm going to be talking about here today is Psalm 14. If you want to join me there for a little bit, I'm going to read a few verses here. So this is Psalm 14. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none who does good. The Lord looks down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there are any who understand, who seek God. They have all turned aside. They have together become corrupt. There is none who does good, no, not one. Have all the workers of iniquity no knowledge, who eat up my people as they eat bread, and do not call on the Lord? There they are in great fear, for God is with the generation of the righteous. You shame the counsel of the poor. You shame the counsel of the poor, but the Lord is the refuge. Oh, that the salvation of Israel would come out of Zion. When the Lord brings back the captivity of his people, let Jacob rejoice and Israel be glad. The reason I bring this up, and I know many of you are going to think, oh, well, okay, what's the point? You're preaching to the choir here. We believe in God. Hold on to that question. That's important. But first, I have a question for you. What's this? It's a cat, right? Yeah, definitely. Probably a kitten. But for sake of argument, we'll say cat, because I put this word. Okay, now I'm gonna put a word up there. I want you guys to not read it. You failed. Yeah. Don't read it. Okay, is it possible for any one of you to look at that and not understand what it is? Why, though? Why? Why do you know what this says? You've been taught. That's a good point. There are other reasons, though. Let's flesh this out a little bit. Why do we understand what this is? It's in our brain. So there's information there, right? So input creates output. I like that. But there's something beyond that. Who decided that shape right there, that half moon, says K? Why is this pyramid shape with a cross in the middle? Ah. And how come when we put all three of these together, it spells this? Why?
Because people wanted to have a rich language.
We wanted to have language. Okay, I'm glad we're getting somewhere. Language denotes something, okay? Which we'll flesh this out in a little bit. What does this say? Nice try. It actually says Mao, which translated means cat. So it does not, no. It does not say cat. It says Mao, which in our language means cat. You can't argue the point that says cat because it doesn't. It says Mao. Now, translated, yes, it means that picture back there to all of us. Why, though? Why does Mao and cat mean the same thing? Those are two completely different languages.
Because we've all seen a cat.
We've all seen a cat. We all know what a cat is. Just because we have different languages, we needed words, right? We needed words to associate it with because we're using auditory signals to try to relay, once again, information. Yes, it was. That is actually ancient Chinese caricature for it. Oh, I love that. They built a tower once upon a time, and God kind of shut the construction project down pretty abruptly. That's actually a really good, not to get off key here a little bit. That's actually a really good conversation because I was just hearing a debate about languages just recently, and interestingly enough, all languages in the world are complete. Like, you can't, it's really hard to find a language that's an incomplete language. And I know many of us are like, well, yeah, of course, language needs to be complete. Yes, that's the point. If evolution were true, there needs to be fragmented languages. There has to be. But it's not, because all languages are complete. They don't find fragmentary, subtle segments of languages. Sorry, little side note. See, we're getting into creation, guys, okay? I'm sorry. This is where it sucks me right in. John 1, and many of us know this. Many of us can probably even recite it. If you can recite it, you don't need to go there, but I'm going to go there. So this is John. I go to Luke and I hang a left. Duh. Okay. So this is John 1. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things that were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the dark, and the darkness did not comprehend it. Okay. Several things here. We're talking about words, we're talking about communication, we're talking about meaning behind things, communication, language. language, right? Here, very interestingly, the Word is alive. It's a person. Is this peculiar to anybody else? Like, this is not normal to say, and the Word did this. Now, we all know who's the Word. Who's the Word? Jesus. Jesus is the Word, right? Right. Jesus is the thing that has gone forth out from the Father and given us salvation. He has given us in here, I should have highlighted it, my sincerest apologies, life. Life. Actually, it's not on that verse. It's on the next verse. 3, life, and he was the life. The title of this is Life from Life. You cannot get life from non-life. You see, when Jesus knelt down, got his knees dirty in the mud and the dust and the earth, the early stages of the earth, right? And shaped Adam and got dirt under his fingernails and then breathed into him the breath of life. Life only comes from life. This is just peculiar. Through him, everything was made. And the Word is a person. This is, I don't know, to me, it always just blows my mind when I hear this kind of stuff about God, because, especially about Jesus, because this is not normal language to say. Right, exactly. Symbolization. But here's the thing. We know that Jesus is the Word. Once again, we're going back to these images type of thing. I did have, if I were to put a cross up there, for example, I was going to put that up there. I think I took that out, though. If I put a cross up there, a symbol of a cross, so like a picture of a cross, you would already have some sort of idea of what that meant, right? And then what was that? Oh, there we go. Hey, here we go. Cross is right back here, okay?
It's symbolizing Jesus' sacrifice.
His sacrifice, right? His life, what he was willing to go through, what he did. And I had someone who, quite frankly, I'm just going to say that I'm not trying to see it sound mean right now, but he missed the point because somebody just recently was saying, that gets me. Okay. That gets me. Okay. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The cross was just horrific. You sit there and you suffocate and you're literally nailed to a piece of wood. Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to derail too much. This is just, I get excited when it comes about the Word of God and Christ when it comes to this. We're talking about life here. Does anybody know what this word says? DNA. Boom! Thank you. I knew someone was going to get it. DNA. Here's a very interesting thing about DNA. Remember, this is, and forgive me, but this is one of my reasons for trusting in the Lord. This guy's name is Anthony Flew. He was a very well noted atheist of his day. He was quoted in saying, let me just read this. What I think the DNA material has done is show that intelligence must have been involved in getting these extraordinary, diverse elements together. He continued on and said, the enormous complexity by which the results were achieved look to me like the work of intelligence. No, it is not practically like a language. It is beyond a language. It is so incredibly complicated. I'm going to try to describe it to you right now, but I will fail because I will barely scratch the surface. Early microscopes, like a couple hundred years ago, okay, mind you, they did not discover DNA back then. They just got to see cells. They thought cells were little sacks of jelly that just floated around your body and carried stuff around. That's all. That's all they thought they were just little sacks of jelly. Why? Because that's all their microscopes saw. Now we know what? Anybody in biology? Now what do we know about the cells? Right. For those of you who are listening online, he just rattled off probably about 4 or 5 things of the components inside a cell. It is not a little sack of jelly. Same with DNA. This gentleman, Anthony Flew, was speaking about DNA before we ever got to tear them apart and to look at the components. All he saw was, hey, there's this ladder-shaped thing that's all twisted. Everybody know what a double helix is? What DNA looks like? Let me get a little picture here. Down here on the bottom here, this is this is where it starts. As you unwind the whole thing, it ends up looking like this, way up there in the upper left, okay? It's literally just a handful of components, but with an infinite number of combinations. It does. It's crazy. Actually, I'm going to show you some images of them. So, anybody familiar with Francis Crick? That's okay. Francis Crick was one of the discoverers of DNA. He actually got a Nobel Prize for discovering DNA. This is what he said. An honest man armed with all the knowledge available to us now could only state that in some sense the origin of life appears at the moment to be almost a miracle. So many are the conditions which would have to have happened, which would have had to have been satisfied to get it going. Speaking about DNA. These are two atheists that are being, quite frankly, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give them a gold star for this one. You guys are being honest. It looks like there's something intelligent here. I would postulate there is. There definitely is something, because we're talking about languages, right? And I appreciate that Caitlin said this so much, because DNA is a language, but it is way more than that. Okay? It is way, way more than that. See, these people are not believers. They are atheists. And this, Francis Crick actually ended up, which, by the way, if any of you are, please do not be fooled by this. Francis Crick was one of the people who tried to, how can I put this? Tried to give reason for there being no God when it comes to DNA. And he theorized something called directed panspermia, which literally means, the theory was aliens came around, sent spaceships out into space with DNA on it, and seeded it all over the universe. Okay, does that fix the problem? Oh, who created the aliens? Where did the aliens get that? Oh, that just pushes the problem out to the next generation. That doesn't solve. Just because I said something does not mean I gave an answer. Okay? Learn that in school. Just because you put an answer down doesn't mean that it was the right one. So, see if this will work. Maybe. Okay. What you're seeing here, hopefully you're seeing it, is that sack of jelly. This is a dividing cell. This is an actual image of a dividing cell. There's going to be an animation after this, and we are going to be able to see what the DNA is doing right now in your body. Your body is doing this right now. Your cells are doing this. Check this out. What does that look like to you? That's DNA. Those are proteins. It looks like a machine. That is absolutely correct. Inside your body, when it's splitting a cell, that is what it is doing. It is literally tearing the DNA in half, reassembling the DNA in one strand and reassembling it in another, and it's splitting the cell in half once it's done. That is animated, because otherwise we can't see it that clearly. Otherwise it looks just like a big mushy blob like that. Doesn't it seem more than just code? Just coincidence? Right, like this seems a bit complicated. DNA is very interesting. DNA, they found out, this is what I'm saying about them being intelligent, like cognitively honest with everything. If I were to, I'll give that example later. These are examples. Can anybody see what these examples are? Let me read them to you. Was it a car I saw? Was it a car or a cat I saw? Okay, somebody read it backwards. Oh, never, odd, or even. Read it backwards. Right. Rise to vote, sir. Read it backwards. It's rise to vote, sir. These are called palindromes. Guess what? Palindromes, yeah? I know, no, but who uses palindromes? Come on. Except for weirdos like me. Race car, right? Palindromes are sentences, phrases, not really sentences, usually they're just short phrases, that you can read them forward and backward. The interesting thing about DNA is the proteins that read DNA, there are sections of DNA that are designed to be read forward and backward and have meaning. See, if I were to take the word cat and spell it ATC or CTA, it doesn't spell cat anymore, does it? It doesn't have the meaning that we're trying to get out of it, which is cat. Here's another thing about DNA. I know this is a really strange sentence. It says, I like Choco later that evening. These are embedded sentences, crossover sentences that have two meanings. If you break the sentence apart, it says, I like chocolate later that evening. Okay? But if you read the top one, it means the same thing. I like Choco later that evening. That's because it's encoded. They're crossed sentences. Spies used to do this type of thing all the time. They would embed code into things. Here's another fun one. Can you show Mike Olson checks from Oliver's labeled facts and set it on Herb's desk? These are embedded codes. If you go through this code and skip the same amount of letters, you get chocolate.
Making me hungry.
Yeah, I know, right? What does this say?
Chocolate.
Nice try. Does not say chocolate. Strawberries. Chocolate and strawberries. No. No, that's not what it says.
I want to play cards later. Strawberries eating, no, cat eating chocolate.
Oh man, now we're playing Wheel of Fortune here. No, not quite, not quite. Why can't you read this? We don't know the code. Check this out. If I gave you the code, God is love, trust him. That's what this says. You don't know the code. If you break it down, here's the thing. Here's a very interesting thing about DNA. Let's say we worked at a coding company. Let's say we made cell phones. And our boss came to us and said, hey, listen, I need you to write the code for the video and audio encoder on this phone, okay? So people can, watch movies, listen to music, and that kind of stuff. We say, okay, yeah, sure, of course, boss, that's what we do, right? So we all come together, we're a good team, we start coming together, we start writing the code, okay? But then the boss comes in and says, okay, now, hold on, time out, we only have so much space. You need to also be able to write the code so that if it's read backwards, it plays the videos. When it read forward, it plays the music. What? And then the boss comes back a little bit later and says, hold on. Also, I need it when you skip so many letters in the code, I need it to do this. Oh, by the way, also I need it cross-embedded so that the sentences, if you read it this way and then you take out the sentence, you could break it apart. And I'm going to tell you right now, as a programmer, that is not possible. It's not possible. Like, it is humanly impossible to do that. We don't have the cognitive function to be able to make code that when you read it forward, it does one thing, and when you read it backward, it does something else. That first one we did with the palindrome, we don't have the capacity to do that. When we write code forward, and that's it. They've been writing code, guys, for what? Probably 70 years now from computers, from the 50s or so, 60s, when computers really started. I mean, it was analog, but same thing, code. Right. So we do not have the capacity to do that. DNA does. All the DNA in your body will fill 2 teaspoons. But if we stretched it out, DNA is not just a strand. DNA is a very long strand that's like a wound ladder that keeps winding and winding and winding and winding on itself until it winds up into a spiral. Then that spiral spirals around a spiral, and then that spiral spirals around a bigger spiral. That's how it's wound up in your body. This is why I'm saying, like, I could go on this for ages. I don't want to, but there's a point to all of this. But here's my point. If you take all the teaspoons in your body, you only have enough DNA to fill 2 teaspoons if we took it all out. If you stretched it out, it would stretch to the moon and back multiple times. One person's DNA. Our brain, this stuff can't fit in our brains. Like, we think about that, we're like, what? That just doesn't even fit. What? It doesn't make sense, but it's because it's so compressed. It's so twisted in and twisted in and twisted in. If you were to stretch it out, yeah, it's really, really long. This requires an intelligence. I only bring this up. I only bring this kind of stuff up to say, listen, this didn't come by accident. We can trust in the Lord. He designed this. Life comes from life. Intelligence comes from intelligence. And language is intelligence. Yes, well, Brother Becker, we already believe in God. We already trust in him. John 11:25-26 says, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? I like to swap out the word believes, by the way, with trusts a lot. Because unfortunately, the word faith and belief in this modern English world it's so skewed and disgusting. Belief and faith almost sound like a fantasy word now. It's terrible, and I hate it because faith is such a beautiful word. Belief is such a beautiful word, but trust. I love trust because it means there's substance there in this language today. 2 Corinthians 1:20 says, for all the promises of God in him are yes, and in him amen, to the glory of God through us. When it said in the beginning was the Word, Jesus is the Word. He is the promise that was kept. He's the one. I'm hoping in this to give people reasons to trust. Trust in the Word. Why I brought all of this up is for one reason. Justin, you're preaching to the choir. We already trust in God. We're in a Christian church. We're here. We're listening to a message. Time out. With all of these, trusting in God. Let me ask you a question. And you can be honest with this because I voice the truth about this. Do you trust God? I do too. Amen. Next question, and I would highly advise you not to answer it. Do you trust him with every I'll say serious Christian. I've always been around the Christian church, guys. I've never been the wayward son that left God and left the family. I've never been that, okay? I'm not trying to boast myself up. I'm just saying it never made sense to me. So I never went down that path. But when I started becoming a serious Christian, this started happening. I allowed Jesus to come into my heart, allowed him to come into my home, and he started cleaning. Just cleaning stuff. There wasn't a ton of stuff there in the big rooms, right? But he started finding stuff. Oh yeah, Jesus, you're right. You're right. Okay, yeah. And then I'd help him clean. Okay, yeah, good. So now the living room looks good. The kitchen looks good. The dining room, yeah, it's a little messy, but okay, yeah, we can work on this. Yeah, he's working on the dining room with me right now. But every time he walked past that one room, no, it's okay. I got this. It's mine, God. I've got this. When John just said, and self gets in. This is what I'm talking about, guys. Do you trust God? See, when we know something to be true about the world or about God, and yet we do not following it, or we are not following it, we don't trust him. Do we trust that he has what's in our best interest? You see, let me give the example of Adam and Eve. Eve reached up and went, that action was mistrust. God, hey, stay over there, God. I got this. I got this. God, you don't have to go into this room. Let's say we let God into this room. Let's say some of you, you know what, I've let God in all of my rooms. Let me ask you another question. Have you let him in the basement? Have you let him in that corner over there that has a vase and there's stuff behind it? Have you let him pull that vase out and sweep underneath of it, around it, under the furniture? I'm not saying, guys, listen, I'm not saying, okay, you need to be the one out there and finding all the, no, listen, I'm just saying, be cognitive to the fact that Jesus is trying to earn your trust in every angle. He's always got our best interest at heart. Always. But the moment that we do something or we refuse to do something that God has already told us to do or not to do, whatever the situation is, because I don't know what your situation is. I can't say that you're trusting God. I don't know. I know, and I appreciate what Joe just said. I try. When I said, do you trust God in every aspect? I try. That means that we're trying, if Jesus is trying to get into a room, we're like, okay. And he gets in there. I don't know if you guys, I don't know. I don't know how you guys clean, but I clean. I messy clean. I rip everything out of the closet, everything out of the bed, everything under everything, and I just make a pile and then clean everything, and then we start the pile. I call it messy cleaning. My brother used to. Uncle Chris, guys, used to absolutely hate it when we had to clean the room because he hated me pulling everything out. But that's the way I cleaned. But this is the thing. God's kind of the same way. Hey, do you need this? You haven't used this in 2 years. You know, or you have been using this. So grab something, you'll go, you have been using this, but every time you use it, you see these sharp edges? You keep getting cut from it. You can throw this away. And your hands will not have cuts on them. But for us, it's like, what? Yeah, well, yes, that's how he works. Everything he does for us is in our best interests. Every time. And when we do not follow something that he has given us an explicit command for, we aren't trusting him. So I want to give you one reason today to trust him. Life comes from life. Even eternal life comes from life. Let's go ahead and sing our closing song, which was so graciously chosen. 5:16.